Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen, and we're here again for the Sunday conversation and a lot of good topics we have on tap for you here tonight. Obviously, our guests, as always, Eric and Harry, will be on the show here tonight with plenty of topics. And I think the number one topic people are probably going to want to talk about here tonight is the future of Jeff Capel. A lot of things going forward. We've obviously talked to a number of different people, and again, we'll talk to you again here tonight. But if you were there at the Pitt meet and greet in February, we talked about how the Pitt athletic department was moving towards getting rid of Jeff Capel. We're now, we expected that decision to come on Sunday, but Pitt takes care of business, and it was able to get a victory against Syracuse up in the Dome over in overtime. So Pitt then will now play their next basketball game on the schedule. Now it's survive in advance in the ACC tournament against Stanford. And we'll see where they go from there. Also, Pat Narduzzi in here in week one, third practice of the week here on Friday. A number of names that he talked about who are doing a really good job so far in the first week of camp, but he also updated on players who are currently injured, who they're not going to really push those guys to really test their limits and to make sure they stay healthy. We'll talk about those names that aren't participating in spring football camp. And of course, we always have the open Q&A down below. As always, you're more than welcome to use the super chat button to get your question up on the screen before anybody else's. And while you're here, make sure you stop down below. We're on our road to 2,000. We're so close. Make sure you hit the like button down below. It's free. The subscribe button, it's free. The subscribe button's free. Just let you know when we go live like we are right now, when we drop new videos, and we're able to have those conversations in and out of college football and anything that involves the University of Pittsburgh. Guys, again, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Got ourselves, tried something different here. I'm not a big beer guy, but you got to try here the Coors Banquet beer. Okay, obviously they I guess some people call it the champagne of beer, but let me tell you something. We'll be trying this here tonight. I'm following suit of Eric. He had, it truly inspired me to try some different stuff, and especially from Colonial Beer. Obviously, Eric has a lot better tasting stuff. I can tell you that, but really good different selections that you have at Colonial Beer. This is one of them right here, the Coors Banquet beer. We'll be sipping on that during the show here tonight. But Bill and Alan truly are two of the best, huge supporters of the University of Pittsburgh and Pitt athletics with football and basketball. Make sure you guys go in there today. Get whatever you need. They certainly have everything. The selection's massive when you go in there. But also make sure you stop over and say hello to two of the best, and that's Alan and Bill. And make sure you say hello, talk a little bit of Pitt football while you're picking up your beer for your tailgates, your parties, whatever you need. Make sure you guys go to Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Brian Thompson truly is one of the best, a massive Pitt fan in himself. Again, a season ticket holder of football and basketball. He's certainly been involved with looking to see where exactly Pitt goes in terms of keeping Capel or now getting rid of Capel and then going into that new search. But the best thing about Brian is when it comes to being in the law offices, he truly is the best with working with individuals and making sure that you get the results that you need in your case. He'll guide you through the process from the beginning to the end. And if he doesn't have an answer to a question you have, he'll put someone in front of you that can answer your question. Truly, Brian is one of the best. He comes from a great family, has a great family, and does tremendous work in the community around his area. He's also one of the best because he cares about you, the individual. Unlike the larger law firms, he cares about you and the relationship that you guys have, and to make sure he wants to get the results that you need in your case. Make sure you guys call Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. And of course, we'll get to all the questions and whatnot here today. And we'll get to a number of different things. But first, let's bring on our esteemed guests, as always, Eric and Harry, jumping on board here tonight. Gentlemen, it's been a week. Obviously, a number of stuff here. Pitt football camp starts off. Certainly, everyone's been watching everything that's been going on with Pitt basketball. I think that we're getting closer and closer to where that change looks like it's going to be made with Pitt basketball, as it's now really coming out into the public. We certainly talked about that with our closed group at the Pitt meet and greet in February, notified people that this change is more than likely going to happen. I'm going to start off with really Harry on the first topic here, because I know people are already reaching into the comments section. We will certainly get to the super chats as well. Harry, when you look at the potential change here and the change that we're expecting, as we were told, again, I understand, and we'll go through everything that I've seen on X today. A lot of crazy thoughts overall, but do you think it's justified with Pitt moving on? And do you see this as a really good thing for Pitt? And where do you think Pitt goes from here?
So I think we need to look at the situation. First, to directly answer your question, we're looking at 2 strong seasons out of 8 when it comes to the Capel tenure. I think what makes this unique, and I hate to say very Pitt, is we have, Kuntz in place as the general manager who really, and I think people don't understand the current roster that's put together right now, he didn't put together.
Yeah.
So the next roster he has his hands on. So here we are, great recruiting class. Jay Kuntz can go ahead and start kind of putting his fingerprints on the program, but you had another really bad year. So I do think if they can retain Kuntz in place, put together either 8 to 10 million in NIL, it's probably time to move on. And I think the consensus, and it just hit national media within the last 24 hours, that Jeff Capel probably will be going. And there's a lot of phenomenal young coaches. I did see, and let me say this, I've had more than one Pitt fan, many actually, message me and go, because they know I know Jamie Dixon, reach out. I bet he would come back. And you know what? I don't think that's the direction they should go. Let me say this. I think we saw today Georgia Tech and Boston College both fired their coaches. Now, I don't think Pitt will be far behind. I do think we're going to see regime change here. And I think, obviously, we're seeing that flushing of the toilet for both programs, and they're going to start over again. But I think that when you're looking, Georgia Tech would be, I guess, fairly attractive to some coaches. I think Pitt's a much more attractive job than Boston College.
Yeah.
BC seems to go where most coaches go to die. So I do believe there's an advantage there. But long story short, it's a very Pitt thing that there's a lot on the administrative side going right. You got a good recruiting class, a great guy that can put a roster together, everything. But I think the underlying question is, can Jeff Capel, even with elite talent, coach? And then the second question, and I think the most bothersome thing, is fan apathy. And what we're seeing, and I thought about it the other day when we were watching the last home game. The Pete used to be a place that was an impossible ticket to get. We'd have NFL players coming. Hell, they had Jay-Z there at one point show up.
Yeah.
And, it was rocking. March meant something. Now it's a coffin. So I think those things factor in. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think Jeff Capel is a really good man. I think he's I think he's someone that the players can look up to.
I agree.
But X's and O's do matter. And it isn't like we're looking at a year 2 or 3 for the coach. This isn't a Stallings-like disaster, but 8 seasons is quite enough. So I do think it's time to move on. I think it'll be made in rapid fashion. What I do hope, and let me say this, and I'm sure I'm speaking for every Pitt fan out there, and I'm sure he's doing it, Alan Green has to have the feelers out right now to go, listen, I'm going to make the move. Let's line up our guys, and let's make this quick. Because there might be a chance to retain some of the pieces on the roster or the recruits that have signed. We'll see how it goes.
I would agree with you. And I think that the one thing that has been very well known to this point between people that were sources and really bringing information forward, I would agree with you that there's been a plan going and forth. This has been a 3.5 week process of where we knew we were going. Once Joan Gable was completely on board, Alan Green on board, the donors, I think there's certainly been things going on behind the scenes that have really put out feelers. I've certainly heard some names in terms of basketball coaches that we'll go over here tonight. Eric, I know you haven't seen a lot of Pitt basketball this year, but when you look at a potentially, a new basketball coach, when you look at a team that hires a new coach, the one thing that always happens is when you get a new coach, and especially if it's a great hire, it really boosts the level of the fan base. And I thought Harry had a really good point about just the apathy right now in terms of the Oakland Zoo being dead as it is. The Peterson Event Center where, growing up, we really knew that place to be 12,000, 13,000 strong. Do you think that a new head basketball coach 8 years in could really be a huge bump in terms of energy to the basketball program?
It could be. It depends on who the hire is.
Yeah, like unless it's like Kevin Stallings.
Yeah, and we've also seen, down the road on the football field what people love with new coaches. No, it should, and I do believe that there is already a plan, or at least a short list, or else this move wasn't going to be made. And I think they raised enough money, and this is just from reading a few articles. I mean, you gentlemen would know a lot better than I. I think, the plan to get the money together to buy out Capel was also met with, this is our plan, and these are the guys that we're targeting, and it might be a short list. I hope it's a short list. But again, once it happens, I do think you guys are right. It will happen fairly quickly, probably within 2 weeks, I would assume, because I think then they would probably go through another round of interviews. I don't know how Pitt does things, if they have to go through the board or any type of other NIL donors and such, like giving their thumbs up for a hire. No matter who it is, if they are able to hold on to some of these big recruits, and obviously I think you're going to get different names, right? Said coach is going to also bring in different types of or different players depending on his style. Hopefully they can marry up with some of the players that will be sticking around. But you'd hope to find that middle ground, and I'm hoping it brings excitement, especially at the beginning, and they have some success at the beginning of the year to kind of carry that further into the season.
I agree. And when you look at this team, and I saw a lot of stuff online. Obviously, I see some of the comments here. Nothing is confirmed, guys. Nothing has been put out just yet. Obviously, I don't expect a decision to happen after that final loss. And I think that was pretty clear to me, and how that was presented to me, especially that no firing, no replacement, any decision on that would happen not till the end of the season. That's just how Pitt does business, which I don't mind it. I think Jeff Capel is a great guy. So I think that's a respectful thing to do. But when you look at right now, the University of Pittsburgh, I agree. There were some really crazy comments right now online, especially on X, where some people were very adamant about, if Pitt can put together $12 million, I think it's roughly about $12.5 million for a buyout. Man, if you gotta, get rid of the head basketball coach and you're willing to put up $12 million, where was that money for the roster? Here's a reminder to a lot of the fan base. Where was that money? Not going to NIL. And remember, Heather Lyke was the athletic director here, and that was under no circumstance a massive moving factor in Pitt Athletics department. That's why Joan Gable moved on as fast as she did. That's why that those two really never got along immediately. When Joan Gable was hired as the new chancellor, there was no plan for revenue generation. There was no plan for name, image, and likeness, which is paying student athletes to come to your university and to perform in athletics. There was no plan for that. I can assure you that if Heather Lyke actually had a plan and brought that in, the funds certainly would have been there. Also, number two, the reality is, donors look at it in terms of, well, if I'm going to give you millions of dollars, how much do I trust the basketball coach? Well, there's a lot of apathy, and I thought Harry had a very good point. A lot of apathy towards this team under Jeff Capel. And I understand, from my understanding of how it was presented to me, Pitt's overall NIL resources, if I'm a betting man, this roster this year is about $4 or $5 million. That's it. That's all we saw out of this team, and it certainly performed that way. But to the point of, I understand that Jeff Capel did not have the upper echelon or even middle of the pack resources, so I sympathize with him on that route. But also, too, that does not give you the right to lose to Hofstra. That does not give you the right to lose to Quinnipiac. You can't lose to teams that have less resources than you and then say, well, he should be given more resources and he can certainly perform. He performed really a year or 2 years with a much older roster by attacking the portal. And again, I think it's a great idea. I expect Jay Kuntz to stick around unless something crazy happens to where a new coach comes in. But from all intents and purposes, from anybody that I've talked to, there's a lot of faith in Jay, and there's a lot of faith in what he brings to the table because of his experience, and certainly a lot of different schools trying to poach Jay to go to other schools. And he certainly stayed at the University of Pittsburgh going through the year. Logan here, what is your dream list of coaches? Who do you think we are getting? Logan, just to put it out there right now, names that I've heard that would certainly be connected to Pitt, from people that I've talked to close to the athletic department, close to the basketball team, names that just I've heard: Jim Calhoun at Utah State, Josh Schertz, the head basketball coach at St. Louis University, Brian Hodgson, the head basketball coach at University of South Florida, and Justin Gainey, the associate head coach at the University of Tennessee. Those are the alleged names that were presented to me as potential candidates for the opening, and when it does open for the University of Pittsburgh, those are the names that were presented to me. I'd imagine that there's a lot more names than that. I'd imagine that Alan Green has certainly maneuvered what he needs to do to find those coaches, but also too, he's probably also very busy with the women's basketball head coaching opening, which I'd imagine he more than likely was involved with a lot earlier too, especially with all the lawsuits with women's basketball. And I think that'd be really, really good. Willett Harris, those candidates stink. I completely disagree. Every one of those coaches has over 20 wins. Harry, go ahead. Get your thoughts here.
Whoa. Slow down. I don't. First of all, I can guarantee whoever made that comment has never watched Utah State or Youngstown State for Calhoun, or no. But I wanted to, if I could, first of all, let me go back and make one definitive statement. Because I've had fans inundating me. I agree with the Calhoun comment, and I'm going to comment on that. What I want to say is a coach is far more important. We could have the Fab Five signed right now, okay, but in particular with basketball, I think a coach is far more important than the recruiting haul. And no single 2 or 3 recruits is going to change everything. So what I wanted to say was, in basketball, in the age of NIL, you could actually flip and turn over a competitive roster very, very quickly. Now to the point, the 2 names I've heard a lot are Jared Calhoun, which I'm a Calhoun guy, and then Josh Schertz. The gentleman that made the comment, well, they stink. Let me fill him in. Go back and look at their record. They've won consistently everywhere they've gone. If you're talking about Calhoun, he was at Youngstown State. They were playing at an elite level in their conference. Then he goes to Utah State, and he has over 20, I think it's 22, 23 wins right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this is, you want to talk about a juxtaposition of geography. This guy goes from, Midwest, I'm going to call it that, in Ohio, all the way to the West Coast, and he's still kicking ass. And if you look at Schertz, I'm not sure. Those are the 2 I'm hoping are preeminently interviewed. We'll see what happens. But the bottom line is all they do is win. So I don't know what whoever made that comment. My guess is they know nothing about their backgrounds.
Yeah,
but both would ignite a lot. And I guarantee you Calhoun, based on the ties towards the East Coast, is dying to come back. But I would say this. I would find it fascinating if an assistant was hired, because this is an ACC basketball job, and you want a head coach with a winning track record you could plug and play and just get moving. But I like those 2 names a lot, and those are the 2 names that keep popping up from all the sources I have.
Yeah, and then to Willett, I get what you're saying, but also too, you're saying a 1-year wonder at St. Louis. He's got over 20 plus wins at St. Louis. He also won multiple national titles in the Division II era.
Right.
The 1-year wonder stuff just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't logically it does not make any sense. The same thing goes for a guy like Brian Hodgson. I think what Brian Hodgson has done at USF, he had 20 wins this year. The previous year, okay, this is a first-year head coach at USF, has 20-plus wins this year. He just came from a university where he also had 20-plus wins. I mean, so he's had 20-plus wins with 2 different schools in 2 straight years. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal coaching. I mean, that's leadership in its finest. That is, I mean, those are really good candidates. Jim Calhoun, which you've certainly seen that all over online. Kansas State actually reached out to, from looking online here, Josh Schertz declined an interview with Kansas State. From my understanding, from people I talked to, there are some concerns money-wise at Kansas State, from what we were told allegedly, that there are some concerns there about how much NIL they have, things of that nature, which is why he declined that interview with Kansas State. Also, I think that potentially Josh Schertz has an idea of where he's going. I think that those conversations have probably already been had with a number of agents. Probably no decisions have been made, but he kind of gets the direction of where he could potentially be going. But to your point, Harry, I mean, those are really good coaches. I mean, you have to be realistic. Those are really good records.
Let's throw one more comment out there. And I'm the gentleman that said they stunk. Years ago, Pitt hired this guy from Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona. And everyone in the area cringed and said, wow, what a bust. What a ridiculous hire. What that guy turned out to be Ben Howland, and he turned out to be one of the single best coaches in the nation
Yep.
and went to storied UCLA. So before you leap, you want to look a little bit. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. And I know we're going through a number of comments here. Again, down below to get your question. I won't be able to get to everybody's question here tonight, but if you have a question you want to get up on the screen, use the super chat button down below. And of course, as you're joining here tonight right now, we're almost at 2,000 subscribers. Down below, very simple. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get us to 2,000. Love the pod. JJ Capel has to go, and can Malik Knight be the number one wide receiver? Sounds like lots of positive talk about him. We'll certainly get to the football stuff here in a second. But, I agree. I think we've really kind of answered that question here now. We do believe that a change needs to happen. But I also do believe that guys like, Jay Kuntz needs to stay here. I think he could really be a really good general manager. And when you ask around anybody outside the University of Pittsburgh, when you look at some other basketball schools where I was able to be put into touch, I reached out to a couple of people who are connected with other basketball GMs and free agents or agents around the country. They directed me to a couple people that talked about Jay's reputation in college basketball. Was well known in terms of Bobby Huggins' right-hand man and the roster he put together through the transfer portal multiple times. Even the year he was let go, that roster is pretty well put together. And then even in his time at St. John's with Pitino. So the information's certainly there, to say the least. There's another one. Capel complaining they didn't get money over the summer to go to Topgolf every Friday. It was a pathetic thing to say. Read the room by Jeff. Rhino Pitt, I did see that tweet, and I did see that interview. I guess it was on a radio interview with the University of Pittsburgh that he had on his radio show. I really do believe those comments are now being made, and the one that he made yesterday about all the outside drama and stuff like that and the outside distractions, I think he understands he's on his way out, and he's now making those comments. So, is that a great thing to say? Not at all. And that's a little concerning in terms of where the basketball program is right now. I think most people would agree that your focus should be on winning basketball games. Obviously, having money to go to Topgolf, I mean, all the players are being paid. Jeff Capel is making millions of dollars. I'm sure someone could have opened up a credit card and paid for an opportunity to go to a one night event at Topgolf. So I don't know why he made that comment. I was a little shocked by that and taken back by that as well. I'll start with Eric on this one. With comments regarding, from Jeff Capel in terms of, well, we weren't able to go to Topgolf during the summertime and we didn't have money to go out and have fun, on like every other Friday. Is that a good, I understand team building. That's important. But do you think that in the terms of, going into your 8th year as a basketball coach, you've had maybe, 1 year, if not 2 years of success out of the 8 years, do you think you should be more focused on winning basketball games than money going to Topgolf?
No, he's looking for deflection of what's going on the court. So he knows he's gone or he's on thin ice. So in my opinion, again, this is from an outside looking in, and I would like to think higher of Jeff Capel from being a man of higher integrity, and I'm just saying this, but when you come out with things like that, and you're someone like Jeff Capel, who's been a part of teams, I really think he's just trying to deflect from the issues that's going on the court. And the team building is important, but the team building doesn't necessarily need to cost money. Right? Team building can be hanging out in the clubhouse or in someone's dorm room playing cards and just hanging out in a rec hall on campus somewhere.
Exactly.
You don't need to go to Topgolf to do that. So we did a lot of that. Our big bonding in college was, we had the games that were a driving distance. They were on the bus playing spades. They were on the bus just joking with each other. That was the team bonding. It didn't cost a dime. So saying we don't have enough money to go to Topgolf, I think, was a deflection.
I agree. And, Harry, when you look at these names right now, But then you also you look at Jeff Capel's comments. I wanted to get your thoughts. Do you think that's a bit of, hey, you got to read the room, brother? I mean, you can't be saying that kind of stuff when you're having a bad season as it is. Now, I don't know when he made those comments. That when I looked at the tweet, it was from his Pitt Radio podcast, his Pitt Radio show that he does, I think, every Tuesday or every Wednesday. I don't know if it was in the beginning of the year or if it was recently. But I'm not sure you can make those comments this so far into it where you should be really focused on winning basketball games, and especially with all the pressure on the team, the way the roster was constructed. I think there's a lot more things you can do. I think certainly, you look at opportunities to grow as a basketball team, to grow as a team in general. I think there's a lot of ways you can do that. To openly go on your radio show and say, well, we didn't have money to go to Topgolf or, to go somewhere during the summertime or do anything, is a little shocking. Did you agree with that, or what are your thoughts on it?
I think this is twofold. Think of human psychology. I am humanistic. I wouldn't want to be in his position right now. So I think it's twofold. One, it's just sheer frustration. Let's face it, he comes from a storied program. He said an ACC program. The guy wants to win. He hasn't won. It's probably embarrassing. Two, and I think Eric hit it on the head, he's deflecting. Mm-hmm. He has to be cognizant of what's going on. He probably reads some of the tweets. I'm sure he knows what's going on, the reports. So it's a deflection. But I think sometimes when you're in the midst of so much tumult and pressure, you say things and not realize, because let's face it, he's going to want to work again. He's still pretty young. So
51. 51.
You don't want, this is where, if I'm his agent, I go, listen, you want to curtail that because what you're doing, it looks poorly on you. You might be burning a few bridges here or there. And what program will take him right now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, it might be at a lower level if he takes over as a head coach somewhere, but I think it's a combination of that. I'm human. I get it. If I was under the microscope like he is, I'd be frustrated too. But you still, I think the preference would be walking out with class and not burning as many bridges. And again, I want to say that they've given him a long runway. Eight seasons is quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't feel as bad saying it's time to go. If we were 2 to 3 in, and I've heard a few people. I get this all the time. I get DMs from fans. I get texts. This is not, I want to reiterate, this is not Kevin Stallings. Even this team, honest, I was talking with my son last night. If you add like a shooter and a big man, and honestly, they made their foul shots. For Christ, I should watch my language. If they would have just made half their foul shots in some of the games, you're adding. We sat there and we actually went down the schedule. They would have won an extra 4 to 5 games. So. This isn't a roster bereft of talent. It just didn't come together well. Yep. They lost men. But, how many excuses can you have? So I think it's time. I've never seen, and I've been doing this 30 years, a bigger disaster than Kevin Stallings. That was on a level that's unprecedented. But I think it's time, and I do think that his ego and frustration is there. And I'm human. I actually get that part. But if I'm his agent, his wife, whomever, his brother, I grab and go, you know what? Go out like a man and just let's look for the next opportunity.
I agree. And, again, I'm seeing some of the comments in terms of, the budget and whatnot of what you were able to get. But the one thing I do go back with is, again, the donors call it what it is. And I know, there's certainly been reports of Joan Gable being very upset in terms of how this basketball season went. I don't think Alan Green's very happy about how this basketball season went. But the one thing I do say, and again, I brought it up months ago. It was presented to me that the only team that we had more money than was Boston College, who just fired their basketball coach as well. But at the end of the day, if you're going to use that excuse and that kind of comment comes up, you can't lose to Hofstra. You can't lose to Quinnipiac. You can't lose to the teams that have less of a budget than you. If you would have beaten those teams, hey, then it's like, man, hey, he's proven he's beaten all the teams. He's got more budget than. There's guys that are certainly on this team. Hey, they can make a lot of sense. But when you look at the roster as constructed right now, and from any basketball professional or expertise that I've talked to, you look at the roster right now, there was so much, trust put on Deshaun Jackson, which that's a whole nother debacle, which I think the University of Pittsburgh needs to get figured out. Why guys who come here, he played 3 years, started at Iowa State for 3 years, comes here and he's, medically ineligible. That's a thing on Pitt that needs to be figured out immediately. And I got a lot of questions about that. Conversation for another day. But you look at the roster, besides Deshaun Jackson and then Roman Cialepa, I think Dunning has really come on a little bit towards the end of the season, but you look at the rest of the roster. I mean, it's abysmal. How can you miss on so many guys when there's schools below you who are performing at such a high level with less money than you, and they're winning at a certain level? How are they producing at a high level, but then you're not, and then you're losing to guys like Hofstra and Quinnipiac in years like this? And we've seen bad losses in previous years as well. That's just this year. There's really no excuse for it. If you win those games, I can have an honest conversation and say, hey, you know what? He beat the teams he should have beaten. We need to up our game. Also, to the point again, Heather Lyke, and again, I will say this till the end of time. I got so much flack from a certain portion of the Pitt fan base because I called out that, hey, Heather and I even said it. She did a great job with facilities. Joan Gable in certain reports talked about how it was a little over excessive. I think what she did with the Peterson Event Center was terrific. I think it's one of the best facilities in college basketball, bar none, across the board, between the luxury suites, the club level. I mean, I've sat in the boxes. I mean, they're beautiful spaces. But when you look at the overall plan for NIL, she refused to talk about it. I mean, even a little bit. I mean, she had no desire. Her thought process, I will never forget when I was told when Pitt won the 2021 ACC title. I remember the conversation being brought to me and says, JJ, these two truly believe NIL will go away. That was the craziest. And they were talking about Heather Lyke and Pat Narduzzi. It was the craziest conversation I've ever seen in my life, where you could see where we were going. You could see that NIL was becoming more and more prevalent in not just basketball but revenue sports, and it set really Pitt back. And the tweet I put out, Chris Bickle will forever in history. He will go down as one of the best Pitt men out there who helped Pitt really survive with no backing and lack of common sense and lack of strategy from the Pitt athletic department. John Pelusi was certainly in there. Jeff Goldberg was certainly in there. Doug Whaley was certainly in there. Those people don't get enough credit, and along with everybody else on the Alliance 412 team, really kept Pitt alive. I think that's really the reason why we went to the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. And even then we still had low resources. But at the end of the day, there's not enough production on this team. There's lack of people being developed. And I think that it really does make sense for this team in this organization to move on. John Waffle here. As someone who actually met Coach K, I highly doubt the Topgolf is what motivated his players to win titles. Exactly. I think that was a crazy comment by Capel. Again, thank you for the super chat, John. Thank you for anybody who puts the super chats in. We'll get yours up immediately with the super chats. But there was also another comment, and I see the comment section going wild on it here. Jeff Capel also talked about how during the season Pitt fans were booing. And again, I understand that, and I understand it from both sides. You're booing young men. I get it, but they're also being paid. There's also a discussion in that. Eric, when you look at this basketball team, he made a comment about, well, you got to know where we are, and it's expected that we're going to get booed. And it was almost like it was a shot at the fan base. One, as a head basketball coach, for where you are, even a head basketball coach, head football coach, you should never attack the fan base who pays money directly and uses their own money to go watch you play. And when the product's bad, they boo it. I kind of do understand it. Do I boo the players or the teams? No. Am I furious when we lose? Certainly. But people have that right to do so because players are being paid massive amounts of money. We're seeing down in Mississippi right now where NIL money is now going to be tax exempt. You want to talk about not teaching people what real life is about? not paying taxes on being paid. You know what, Eric and Harry and I, we need to figure out if we need to move to Mississippi because maybe we can get a tax exempt from working. You know what I mean? We don't have to pay
I'd rather have
tax.
an aggressive colonoscopy than go to Mississippi. I'm sorry. With all due respect to anybody from Mississippi, I'll stay here in the Berg. I'm good.
Yeah, but it's like, what are we really teaching? Eric, when you look at the situation as a basketball coach, do you agree or disagree? You really shouldn't. You shouldn't really aggressively attack the fan base. If anything, you should say, hey, you know what? I understand where they're coming from, and I respect the overall passion of the fan base. I respect the passion of the fan base. Do you think he went about that correctly? Or, hey, you shouldn't be going after fans, but just embrace the actual expectations here because, Pitt was number one for a number of years from the early 2000s to almost, before the end of the Jamie Dixon era. There has been success here.
No, he did not handle it correctly. I think coaches, quarterbacks, when they're in the meetings, they're in the press conferences, you always give credit to your teammates. As a coach, you give credit to your players when everybody wins. And then when you lose, you take the blame, even if it's not your fault, right? You could lose a game like what Harry was talking about with the free throw attempts. That's not coaching. That's player execution, right? And if you lose the game based off of free throws, you say, you know what, I still need to coach better. I understand the frustration with the fans. I'm frustrated as well. And there's obviously, and you guys have heard this throughout a lot of different sports, there's a lot of what they call coach speak answers that you just give, and they're the boring, mundane answers, but you just give that to the press at the press conferences, and you move on, and you say certain things. You call out players for not performing behind closed doors. I don't even think you even talk to the players about the fans booing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, as a coach, you never, because you know why? Because one of the things that the coaches say is you don't. It doesn't matter what people say. The only opinions that matter are what's inside this locker room. That's true with football. That's true with basketball. It's true with softball. I'm sure that's true with pretty much all team sports. So why does it matter now? And again, I think it's another deflection.
I agree.
So to me, yeah, you're right. He handled it poorly. The fans, listen, the fans know that they're protected by – if there's any retaliation, they're going to get lawsuits. They're going to get whatever that may be. They're going to get their 5 minutes of fame on social media, things of that.
Yeah. So
fans can go a little bit above and beyond what they should, but at the same time, they are a paying customer and they have the right to boo. If they don't like what they see on the court or on the field, they have a right to boo.
Yeah. And again, to Willett Harris here, brother, you're just having a bad night with some of these takes. You're saying you have zero confidence in Alan Green because he hired Brian Harsin. Brother, Brian Harsin was 69-19 at Boise State. I remember when he was hired. Every team in the country in the Power Five at that time wanted Brian Harsin. And also, after Brian Harsin, what has happened at Auburn? They have not won. And that's been through numerous coaches. I mean, if you look at the history, especially this previous one, they brought in I can't remember the name of the head football coach that's there. He was at Liberty, then he came over. He was a former Ole Miss head coach too. I can't remember his name. Got caught up in the prostitution stuff. I mean, Brian Harsin was a terrible hire for the SEC. How can you say that though? Because there's been other Group of Five coaches that have gone to the SEC and been successful. You know what I mean? When you have a record of 69-19 at your previous institution, I mean, you've earned respect. And then they ran that guy out of town with false accusations. I mean, I'm sorry, but like Auburn has not won anything.
JJ, I don't know who's throwing this stuff out. I mentioned
Hugh
before.
Freeze, thank you.
Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze.
What I would say to whoever just threw that out on Harston, it's maddening. Again, this is someone that's probably leaping before they look. Auburn has a systemic issue now I think they just made a great hire, by the way, but that's a but. They have been running through coaches left and right. They've been an abject failure for a major SEC program. That has zero to do with one specific AD that was happened to be there. Yep. The other thing, and I've thrown this out before, and I give him this example as well. I've said this because it really does resonate. I was very active at the time with a lot of reporters kind of talking about Justin Fuente when he went to Virginia Tech. And I thought, oh boy, that's not going to be good for Pitt.
Yeah.
He was the hottest candidate in the nation, period. Everyone wanted him. Virginia Tech kind of overpaid a little bit, landed him. He was a complete abject failure. So the point being, you never know. But to blame Allen, I've heard this ridiculous comment multiple times about Harrison. And to your point, JJ, he was a big hot name. I mean, he was a scorching
SEC,
hot name.
SEC, Big Ten, everybody.
If
I remember
Pitt
when that
would've
hire was
hired
made.
him, the same guy that just complained would have been like, woohoo, but it didn't work out. It's simply reality of coaching. And so I don't, just so we could squash that, you know what I mean? I think he deserves a chance to hire his own coaches and see what happens.
And to that point, this is a beautiful level right now for Pitt. Pitt women's basketball, and potentially when it does open up, and if it does open up, the Pitt basketball, this is where you start to judge hardcore Allen Green, because these hires now are so important. Women's basketball, men's basketball, and of course, obviously, football are the major revenue drivers. I think these hires are critical. And when something does happen, whatever it's basketball or that information does come out, it's going to be very interesting, and I think it's starting to get hotter and hotter in terms of who the guys are out there, but we'll pay attention to those names. Looking at a couple comments here. Let me see here. All right. No more comments into those. I think we've certainly, beaten the dead horse enough, but at the end of the day, I think we all agree on this panel right now that Pitt does need to move on, and we expect them to move on, certainly. Now it goes on to the Pitt football team. The first week of camp is in the books. Pitt will not be practicing this week, as now spring break for the University of Pittsburgh is now on board, and all the students are out. They're going on spring break. The football players will certainly go on spring break, and then they'll be back in the third week of March. This whole coming week, they will certainly be not in the building. But Pat Narduzzi talked about a number of names who have been stepping up in terms of spring camp, along with the other practices that they had before spring camp. And there's a number of names going through here. But before I get into some of the names that Pat Narduzzi has talked about, here's a list of names that Pat Narduzzi brought up that will not be participating in the spring when it comes to participating in the football camp. Zach Crothers, who we expect to be 100% by fall camp. I think he's pretty close right now. He was on the field. Got to do a couple things here and there just to get a smile on his face, as Pat Narduzzi quoted. But he will not participate in spring activities because they want to keep him healthy. And that's a guy who needs to be on the field when it comes to fall, when the games matter. Zach Crothers was a guy who was going to perform at a high level last year, started to really come on. Randy Bates talked about him a lot. Unfortunately, hurt his knee, was out the rest of the year after the West Virginia game. So he will not participate. Keith Govea, offensive lineman, guard / center, will not play either. He's a guy that right now I think that's important to where they have a conversation that says, hey, you got to be 110% for fall practice. No reason to get that guy into spring camp right now, when there's obviously just going through a lot of basic concepts right now and installations with the offense. So he's not going to practice. Jaden Bonsu, the Ohio State 4-star transfer from the previous year, he will not play in the spring as he continues to get healthy. And then last but not least, Nigel Maynard will not play during the spring practices and will not play in the spring game as well. But a number of names that were brought up by Pat Narduzzi during a number of great conversations during the week. The number one name I thought that was brought up very quickly, and there's a lot of names that were brought up over the course of the week, but man, Jeremiah Marcelin seems to be the guy at the middle linebacker position who's making a booming impression on this coaching staff. They believed he was really good last year, ended up getting hurt early in camp. He's now back 100% healthy. He was brought on board, and they said, man, he's got an opportunity to start at that middle linebacker position, allowing Braden Lovelace to move around and play all three positions. Also, Mason Heinschel has had a really good first week. Holden Gerner, the backup quarterback who comes in from out of way of Texas State, Auburn, places like that. He came out of high school as a highly rated recruit. He has performed pretty well. Cruz Brookins. Cruz Brookins has been a name that's been popped up through numerous articles. Pat Narduzzi was quoted by saying, what are his expectations this year? All-American and All-ACC this year. Talk about high level of expectations on Cruz Brookins, the hometown hero out of the Whippeal at Steel Valley. Also, Braden Lovelace, who continues to play at a high level, the leader of that linebacker group with a guy like Cameron Lindsay. Speaking of Cameron Lindsay, he was brought up as well. The only reason, they said, I guess the only reason he wasn't starting right away this week, missed a couple classes. He hasn't missed any classes since. He's now back on board. He'll be in the starting crew like he was on Friday and will be continuing to go forward. Alex Sanford, the Purdue linebacker transfer, has been phenomenal so far during camp. They think he's going to be a very good addition to this linebacker crew. The same thing with DeMarco Ward, another linebacker transfer who has done a phenomenal job. Another name, Max Hunt. Max Hunt, tight end, was running with the ones at some portions during the Friday practice. As he continues to show he knows the knowledge of the offense and can certainly get the job done, he starts to get more repetitions at the tight end position. And last but not least, Kanye Thompson. Kanye Thompson, easily one of the fastest players on the team as we sit here today. A guy who has just performed at a high level. Wyatt Villarreal, true freshman tight end, continues to run at a high level, one of the fastest guys on the team, along with Jakirian Boozy Turner, who continues to play at a really good level during camp right now. Between looking at these players right now, Harry, when you look at a number of players that Pat Narduzzi has talked about, who are some of the players that you've seen so far that really, in your mind, has kind of caught your attention to where, hey, they're playing really good so far through only 1 week of camp?
I'm going to focus on two position groups if I can, and this is from like talking to different people. But the one thing that really is fascinating to me, we were all talking about Malik Knight and the lack of transfers beyond him. First of all, from my understanding, Malik Knight has looked awfully good. He's a legit 6'2". He's very fast. He could be wide receiver 1. But let me tell you what I really like, and this is from talking to people that have been down there on a consistent basis. If we go back pre-NIL, and this is going to blow people's minds, you would actually play the recruits that you recruited to the school. So you knew exactly who was there and who would play. And what I really like is I think some of the reason they didn't go crazy in the portal is they really like the players that they brought in. It sounds like a revolutionary concept. But from my understanding, a lot of these guys, you're obviously Blue Hicks and Sincere Lee, but Kinsler and Bryce Yates and all these guys are really starting to show up. So I think what's kind of cool in a sense, you did add the one transfer, but you've had such a good recruiting haul. And from my understanding, Kentrell McCray, Wester is remarkably athletic and fast, and you have the Dunbar with the size. You're adding this mix. And I think the receiving group is going to be actually a surprise for a lot of fans. And I was happy to hear that. The other thing I was told was not to sleep on the defensive ends. And when you look at what potentially could be the two deep of Ghost Neal, Zach Crothers, Jimmy Scott, and Jaden Moore, I was told that Ghost Neal's going to have a bag season. He's going to go off. He looks really good. Narduzzi's talked about it. And I was told Jaden Moore finally is healthy. He's a solid 240. He's going to be looking good. So there's some position groups where I think people were like, hey, why didn't we spend the money? Why don't we bring more people in? But if you look, they actually may end up being quite strong. So hearing really, really good reports. And it's also encouraging. I met Mason and I think, the reports are there. I mean, he's a very mature, very analytical young man working on his game. And it's great to see improvement. And I feel very confident in that. So, but like I said, I think in terms of, I've been trying to listen in. I've had different conversations with people. And what I love to hear is that wide receivers and the DNs, two position groups people are kind of writing off, I think are actually going to be quite strong.
And I agree with you about the defensive ends and the defensive tackles. We certainly heard names during the weeks when it came to young players. A guy who's really performing at the defensive end position, two guys, Reston Lehman and Joshua Pittman, are two true freshmen right now that are performing at a high level. Eric, when you look at this football team through only 1 week of camp, and again, it's spring camp. We can't put too much into it because, they get physical at this time of year, but at the end of the day, we won't know until we have everybody on this football team when it comes to the fall. But in your opinion, who are just, a couple names you've looked at so far through this first week? Like, man, hey, it was good to hear about this guy.
Well, you mentioned Garner, the quarterback that was from Auburn and North Texas, and I said I'm hoping that he is the backup just because of his experience.
Yeah,
I read an article that said that they were talking about Corey Daly, the freshman quarterback, saying that the ball jumps off his arm, and I loved hearing that.
Yeah,
and that's somebody I'm really looking forward to watching at the spring game. I want to see what it looks like when they're in somewhat of a game-like simulation. Again, spring practice is what it is. Even a game is an organized practice. So I love to see what he looks like in the spring game. I also like what Harry's saying too, because this is the time of year where you get these guys that are not household names that start making a name for themselves. And again, they kind of get that pole position going into camp. And I unfortunately haven't been able to read too many reports. Life's getting in the way. I haven't been able to get too many reports. So you guys are educating me tonight, and I love it. But I wanted to see Bryce Yates, and I want to see Kinsler and these other receivers continue to perform well. I cannot talk tonight, man. My goodness. All signs are pointing that they're playing well. So I don't have any specific names as of right now. I'm going to have to wait for the spring game.
I agree, but the one name you brought up there I thought was really good that Pat Narduzzi talked about was Tony Kinsler. They call him TK. He's a guy that continues to really perform. And I think that, personally, we talked on this show, and I do believe, and I think we're all in agreement that, Pitt should have gone out and got a number one wide receiver. I think with the losses, Kenny Johnson did a lot of good things, so I think he could have been the number one receiver. I think after how many years here, I don't think he was that guy. You look at a guy like Raphael Poppy Williams, great heart, certainly performed, had the most receiving yards last year, but not that number one guy. Malik Knight that Harry brought up, I think, and has the real potential with his size at 6'2", the speed he has, great hands, being able to jump up and grab the football is truly impressive in itself. He's got that potential to be that guy. But you look at the wide receiver room, the names that were really brought up this week. Again, we talk about Tony Kinsler. It's very clear that Cade Bell and this offensive group really thought, you know what, hey, we'll go out and get one guy. Their opinion is that they have the guys already on their roster, which is really good in terms of being able to, hey, they truly want to develop their own guys and really think they have the talent there. Tony Kinsler, a guy that was talked about. Cameron Sapp, who was certainly brought up last year as a true freshman, a guy that was potentially on the verge of being on the field. Couldn't get on the field because, one, they had a number of guys in front of them. But he's a guy that was certainly brought up by Pat Narduzzi, and they said you'll see a lot of him this year. C.J. Lee is back healthy as well. I think he's going to be a starter. I think he has the potential to be one of those breakout wide receivers on this football team. Blue Hicks is back again. And then to Eric's point, Bryce Yates is here. And then we also talked about, of course, Malik Knight. I think when you look at this wide receiver room, there's a lot of names here right now. But between the spring and the fall, we're going to have an opportunity to find out who really wants to be in that top 3 or top 4 and really rotate into this wide receiver group, because I think there's a lot of potential there. But now it's the time to prove it. Now it's the time to hit the football field and truly show what you can do. Eric, take your thoughts here.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say is what I hope that Cade Bell does this year. If you remember last year, they ran a lot of receivers in and out of the game. And they really didn't establish a top 3 receivers, which, should have the majority of the snaps. There is a depth of talent here, for what you guys are saying, because we didn't even start. We had also mentioned, Harry and I think JJ's mentioned as well, the guys that are like this. There's a few of those 6'5" guys there that have a chance to make some impact on the outside. I really hope that the spring practice, some of these guys start separating themselves into like Group A and Group B, if you will, and then fall camp. Still get guys in, but there's really 3 solid guys that really step up in this receiving group that actually kind of separate themselves and get a bulk of the snaps, so they can start developing some chemistry with Mason on game day.
I agree. And one name that Mason brought up, and again, he's talked about C.J. Lee, he's talked about Blue Hicks, he's certainly talked a lot about Malik Knight. Another name that was brought up, 4-star true freshman out of Georgia, Rodney Dunbar, 6'5", certainly has a lot of great speed. They talked about during practice how he was able to go up. JJ last year was really pushing him, went up and got a football, but thought he could be more aggressive. Day two, they're out there. All of a sudden, you see a kid really going after the football and really high pointing that football. Rodney Dunbar could be a guy you watch in this football team as a true freshman with the amount of talent. And again, we were lucky enough, had a visit scheduled to go to the University of Georgia. We're able to convince him to go to Pitt. That's a huge pickup. Would not be shocked to see him continue to rise. A name that was really brought up, and we're going to switch a little bit here, just dive in a little bit here with the coaching staff. Man, Brent Davis, I thought that Pat Narduzzi had a very interesting comment, and one that we've talked about on this show, that Brent Davis has a lot of experience in coaching offensive linemen. It's very clear that Brent Davis and Pat Narduzzi thanked Alan Green for for how much more resources where you're able to hire another coach, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, close to millions of dollars, to bring in another coach. Mike Prefer will be a guy who's going to be a special teams coordinator only. And you look at Brent Davis, though, he's going to be coaching tight ends. I think he's going to be doing a lot of work with the offensive line, especially with the run game. Harry, do you see a guy like Brent Davis in the conversations that Pat Narduzzi had with the media saying that, hey, this is a guy that has a lot of experience with coaching offensive lines. He's got a lot of experience in terms of producing at the high levels in the run games that they need between Georgia Southern and Army, where they're predominantly running the football. He's got a lot of experience there. Do you think the Brent Davis hire could be massive for a guy like the offensive line here at Pitt, but also for Jeremy Darveau, who could use a little bit of help with the offensive line?
Yeah, of course. And, let me say this. If you get a coach with his experience and talent, it'd be a disservice to the team and to him, quite frankly, to have him strictly focused on tight ends. And if he could assist on the offensive line, why not? The other thing, let me say, I'm big into mindset. I'm big into team building, and I really like what he's done. We communicate with some of the parents of the tight ends. He's done a great job in very short fashion, isolating that group, getting them out to dinner. Eric kind of talked about this. It doesn't have to be fancy, know. My son plays D3 football. They go to bowling alleys and things like that, but they're together. That's what matters. And you're building. I really like what he's done. He's got, because let's face it, with the exception of, I think, Hunt, all these guys are all coming together. They've really never been at Pitt. And the gist of what I was told in the messages and the text is that he's really made them a family in a very rapid fashion. But if you have somebody with that skill set, go ahead. And I'm not saying replace Darveau, but if he can assist, and that's the key word, why not? Right? I mean, I don't see why that. I think you'd be doing a disservice to the team if you didn't pluck on some of that knowledge, So and like I said, I'm very pleased there, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that pans out during the season. If we and let's face it, I've said this before. You have Mason right now. You have and God bless Capel. He can identify quarterbacks and receivers like crazy.
Yeah,
we're stocked. We really are quarterback, but we know we have a gamer in Mason. So you might be looking at a 2-year time frame. You got to take advantage of it right now. So I think it's great that you brought in these caliber of coaches that have this experience. You're going to need those line and even the tight ends to block and save his ass from falling on the ground and getting sacked repeatedly.
Exactly. And Eric, you looked at the offensive line last year, certainly a lot of issues up front. We certainly saw it throughout the year. We saw good portions of the offensive line throughout the year, but really saw the issues in terms of the offensive line in the bowl game where there were 7-man pressure, but only 5 guys blocking, no checkdowns, no in the flats, nothing that was currently there because the routes and the route trees were 10, 15, 20 yards, which are certainly time developing. When you look at the offensive line with a guy like Brent Davis, who has over 20 years of experience on the offensive side of the football, but with developing offensive linemen, it has to be good that he's on this team and willing to help and be a massive factor in terms of maybe even guiding Cade Bell in terms of the running game, because the running game was just so ineffective, but also so what's the word I'm looking for? Just scattered all over the board in terms of production. This hire has to be good just overall for the team. Would you think?
I think it's a fantastic hire. you talked about the inconsistencies of the offensive line last year, and it was unfortunately pretty evident at times. At times, they played very well, gave Mason great pockets to throw from. Then, listen, I mean, there was times that, they got bullied by some bigger competition like Miami, Notre Dame, but they also had their moments there. And they also had moments of not playing well against, other ACC opponents. But anytime you bring in somebody that has an offensive coordinator, and I think he was offensive coordinator for our Army for a number of years, which is a run-heavy offense. You have offensive line coaches at, I think it was Virginia Tech or others. I was looking this up earlier. And you're looking for him to help with the tight end, because a lot of times there are 11 personnel where that tight end is kind of kicked back off the tackle, his outside hip. That's an extension of the offensive line, and you had a lot of wham blocks where he comes in motion and he's blocking down on a D tackle, and there's a guard pulling and things of that nature, or they're just running an ISO up the middle with the tight end is essentially a lead blocker. Having that cohesion from the tight end position coach as well as the offensive line coach in cohesion with Cade Bell's offense, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, and actually it may help the offensive line overall improve if you just have someone else's point of view with experience. And I think it helps the entire offense as a collective, because again, it's just someone else's point of view, and I think it's a very, very good hire.
I agree with you, and a very good comment here by Dave in Pittsburgh. Is there a transfer window between the spring and fall? The answer is no. Luckily this year, there was one transfer portal. It was 2 weeks, right in the January era. I think, even Pat Narduzzi talked about this during, the first week of camp, talked about how he would actually like the transfer portal to be open for only 1 week, which I think he actually had a good point. In the first week, it's all about guys going in and people are already knowing where they're going. And then the second week is for teams that figured out, hey, we missed on a guy. Let's go tamper with other schools. And Ole Miss and Clemson is the prime example. Pete Golding really caught in the act of, really tampering with a player at Clemson who signed with Clemson out of the portal. He's there for a week. He's already in classes enrolled. And then he's out the door in less than a week. And I thought Dabo Swinney, who was taking a lot of heat from a number of different people, but for this instance, he's getting glorified because he's calling out names, he's calling out text messages, he's calling out timestamps. I mean, he went full-blown scorched earth, which more coaches need to do. And I think there needs to be more repercussions about overall the sport of college football, which kind of transition us into the last topic here. I know we're already past an hour in, so we're going to do a short topic on this. The College Football Roundtable. Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, Capitol Hill, senators, congressmen, all kinds of people involved with talking about college football this past week. I know a lot of people fell for it's called, I think the Twitter account's called Number 3 Sports, which is like pretty much like a parody account, like for On 3. Made up a fake quote from Trent Richardson about, Nick Saban. Well, I got a car and all this stuff in a house and all this stuff at Alabama. That's not a real quote. Obviously, they were able to get a lot of people, including congressmen this week. But the number one thing, there was a lot of discussion about the rules between the transfer portal, between paying players, between, what really needs to happen with saving college athletics. And Cody Campbell, who's a Texas Tech donor, certainly spends millions of his own money to help support and really grow Texas Tech football, which obviously made the college football playoff this year. There's a lot of conversations about what needs to happen. And one of the things that I thought that was really good is, the antitrust laws. Any type of rule that the NCAA tries to enforce, there's automatically someone going into court and trying to challenge it and then getting more opportunities. When you have a system where college athletics and college athletes are declining to go to the NFL, your system is broken, and they believe they're going to take a pay cut to the NFL. Heck, if you remember back in the day, we had Maurice Clarett trying to enter the NFL draft as a freshman because of the dilemma that he was going through at Ohio State. We had guys trying to go to the NFL after high school. Now we're in a world where guys are being paid more money in the college level than they are in the NFL level right away. It's obscene to me that a guy in college is able to make more money, and the coaches really had a good point. And this is why I want to start with Harry first. Nick Saban, you had Cody Campbell, you had coaches, you had donors, you had special interest groups, you had congressmen, men and women, the president. They brought up a good point. It's not NIL, it's not name, image, and likeness. It's pay for play right now. Right. Do you think that they're on the right path to where there has to be some type of congressional movement to create some type of law where the antitrust laws are no longer able to cripple these universities in the NCAA, because any type of rule they try to enforce, it's going straight to a judge? Do you think that figuring these rules out really helps the game, and more importantly, helps save college football?
So last thing you just said was key. Save college football, save college sports. I see the NIL era right now careening out of control. And let me go back very quickly to remind everybody, not that long ago. So Carson Beck for Miami, right before the national championship game, was asked about classes, how they're going. He paused and said, "Oh yeah, he's obviously getting paid. He was getting paid like $3 million a year, $4 million a year." And he went, "Oh, I don't go to classes." And he was just sitting there essentially playing and sleeping with an adult film star. So I think what the reason I'm pointing that one out, I just laughed out loud when I heard that. And this is, I can't emphasize this enough. You were woefully naive, or you don't have the semblance of intelligence if you believe this is sustainable, this model. It's careening out of control, and what they need is leadership. You need collective bargaining, and you need leadership. So I emphatically agree with what's going on right now. And I'm glad Saban's getting involved because he's so respected. Someone has to stand up and go, we need to calm this down. It's entirely out of control. It's exactly pay for play. The other thing that I think could happen if this isn't curtailed is you're going to start to, we're already seeing it. You're going to see the separation of the teams with the major donors, or like I said, and it's going to be the same teams in the college playoff year in year. Like, honestly, right now, we could probably come up with the top 10. It's going to be the same teams. Yeah. Oregon, Ohio State, I'll go on and on and on. And it's going to diminish the product. Now, Indiana this year was refreshing, but I think, not that it's an anomaly, I think they'll be there next year too, but it's going to be the same blue bloods. So something has to be done. This is out of control. I'm an old schooler. I love the way it was before. I love what Pitt did before. You brought in your guys. It didn't have to be a 4-star. You could get them developed. You knew who they were. You had some semblance of an idea of the roster every year. Basketball, hell, I'm printing a new one out because I can't remember half the names. They're every year we have someone new. So something has to happen. There we go. Lou's right. Lou knows when there's a smart man speaking. But I agree that honestly, I agree with him. Same with basketball. Someone has to step up. There has to be definitive leadership. And I'm glad that there's a first step being made. But thank you, Lou. I agree with exactly what he said.
And to that point, and I've made, in my TikTok certainly went off, because obviously people agree with the conversation that I had and the statement that I had. The transfer portal, if we could solve that, it would really solve 70 to 75% of the issues in college athletics. And here's what I mean by that. College athletes, like anywhere else, okay, you commit to a school. You should be allowed one opportunity, no penalties, nothing, to transfer out of a school when you go there out of high school. So you get one opportunity, no questions asked. You're able to go anywhere you want. Anywhere after that, there should be a penalty. The only other way you could leave a school is if your head football coach gets fired or he leaves for another job. It's that simple. Those are the only two ways. The first way, you're automatically granted one, or you have to sit out. Number two, if your head coach gets fired or he leaves for another job. After that, there should be penalties for how many times you're transferring, because there are now college players who are going to 6 different schools in 6 different years. When your credits are moving from school to school, you're not getting a degree. Only 1% are going to the National Football League. These young guys need to get a degree so after football, they can have a life where they put all that hard work in and it's worth it. But I think the majority of players where you see guys going from the group of 5, then up to the power 4, they can't play at the power 4, so they go back to the group of 5. They have a good season, so they go back to the power 4, but then they just blow it at the power 4 level, so they're back to the group of 5. Some of these guys never graduate. And then we're watching this money flow to the student athletes, which I think is really, really good. They're getting their worth. But also, too, there has to be some type of training for just personal finance. There needs to be something that happens because these guys are going to go broke. You see some of these guys are driving brand new Escalades. Escalade Vs. They're like $150,000, $160,000 off the lot, brand new. You're seeing these BMWs. You're seeing guys buying jewelry, all this other stuff. There's got to be some type of method to what they're doing to where they save this money, invest it to be able to use it for later in life and be able to, one, have millions of dollars later in life. But to solve the issue of college athletics, I think there needs to be 2 ways to leave a school. The first time himself, being able to go to, leave a school on your first try. You're allowed to leave there, no repercussions. And the second way, your head coach gets fired. And then after that, there's got to be issues. There's got to be repercussions. And I really, truly do believe that. If it does, it solves 75% of the issues in college athletics. Pitt man himself, Quadri Henderson, Harry, my guy. Quadri Henderson, former Pitt Panther and a diehard Pitt Panther himself.
They don't come better than Quadri. And not only that, if I could add, his parents are incredible. And one of the greatest thrills I've had in 30 years was at the Pinstripe Bowl. A long story, kind of a funny story. I went to the restroom with my oldest son. Now, keep in mind, he was younger then. I can't find him. My wife is ready to kill me in the stands, and I get a picture on my phone. And Quadri's father saw Gus and recognized him and brought him down to the seats with him. So here's Gus smiling right in between the Hendersons. I went down and we took the classic Harry and the Hendersons photo. And it was awesome. Quadri's as good as they come. He's a great human being. He was a great player, and his parents are incredible as well.
Couldn't agree more. And again, Quadri, appreciate you being here. Appreciate y'all, man. All love forever. A diehard Pitt man forever. Hopefully, when we work some situations out here and some opportunities with a potential Pitt meet and greet after the spring game, we're working on some stuff right now. Harry's done a good job behind the scenes. We're working on something now. Maybe we get Quadri and all these other former Pitt football players into the building and get all these guys together, because obviously Pitt is better when everybody's together. And I can tell you this, there's just nobody better. And again, appreciate Quadri as always, man. Forever. The jet sweep will forever be infamous with Quadri Henderson and the speed and the amount of touchdowns, the kick return in the bowl game. The guy was an absolute just freak of nature, especially when it came to speed, and just a phenomenal football player. Truly miss you, Quadri. If there was a way for you to right now have 6 years of eligibility, we would have taken you, brother.
I'd bring wish you were here. Yep.
Love you, Quadri. Eric Heinschel, Mason Heinschel's dad here. Great comment here. 10 senior basketball players in the Big Ten walk for the senior day at the school they started with. That's insane, guys. I could not agree more with you. Only 10 players in the Big Ten. And there's 16, 17 schools in the Big Ten? Only 10 senior basketball players in the Big walked for the senior day at their school. That is absolutely mind-blowing.
I have an issue with Mr. Heinschel, Eric. He went for sushi, I'm assuming in the Pittsburgh area, and he either didn't invite me or he didn't send me any, because I'm a sushi fanatic. So, Eric, we got to get with it, man, next time. I just thought I'd throw that out to him.
Yes. But Eric is the best. I can tell you this. He's the easiest person to talk to in the world. And we'll have to do something, working that out whenever he's in town. It's always good to see him in the city of Pittsburgh supporting his son, QB1, Money Mason. We got Money Mason here as a QB1 this year. We're excited to see him absolutely kill it. No, in Toledo. Sorry, Harry. LOL.
Oh, okay. All right. He's all right. I can't gripe then. I'm not going to yell at him. He's safe. He's good.
Michael with a good comment here too about Quadri Henderson. That Virginia Tech home game as well was incredible. Quadri had so many great games, but just even the punt returns that he had, were just freakish. The guy broke like 8 tackles going to the end zone. Quadri was a special athlete, and that was just truly fun to watch and to watch him develop and just some of the big plays that he had at Pitt, man. The dude was a superstar, but
and Quadri's coaching at the moment too. I saw that he's coaching, so I'm just glad he's passing the game on to the youth.
Couldn't agree more. And then, of course, as always, hail to Pitt, to Quadri Henderson, and a forever Pitt man. Quadri would have broken the NCAA record, NCAA return TD record if he had stayed, potentially. But who knows? We all make business decisions, and that's a very good one. TikTok man, 3, 2, 1. Well, gentlemen, we're an hour and 15 minutes in. You guys have been incredible with your time here tonight. Cannot thank everyone for tuning in again. Again, we'll have more updates as the weeks go on about the next Pitt meet and greet, which looks to be in the works right now for after the Pitt spring game, which will be truly impressive. We'll have all the parents there. The amount of former players that have texted me that will be there is going to be truly, it's going to be biblical for the amount of former players that are going to be there, especially dating back to the Dave Wanstead era. There's some superstars coming in for that game as well, along with some of the guys even from the 70s and 80s who will also be there as well, and truly blessed to bring those guys. But, Eric, as we finish up the show here, where can they find you on all your socials?
I appreciate that. On X, as you see, at Bird Cave, as well as the Bird Cave's YouTube channel. We go live on Monday nights talking Steelers, Pitt, and everything. And obviously focusing on the draft right now and free agency coming up. Actually, free agency, the tampering starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then the free agency starts signing.
Yeah.
So it'll be a fun time. I'm going to start focusing, obviously, I think a major need for the Steelers right now, both free agency and the draft, probably a double dip would be the wide receiver position, kind of take, from what Quadri played as well. So it'll be a pretty good episode tomorrow night. So appreciate everybody tune in.
Tune in and subscribe to the Bird Cave, the real Pittsburgh Steelers talk. No bullshit in between, all real talk and real knowledge. Going to Harry, I had to bring up Max Paceris, his son, obviously a college football player himself. Saw Quadri in the hotel lobby before the Military Bowl when I was 10 years old. He told me he'd make a play for me. The next thing you know, he takes the first kickoff back for a touchdown, a legend in my eyes. Going to, Harry Paceris here. Where can they find you on all your socials? But, man, that had to have been a special moment, obviously. Max is a 10-year-old kid. I'm going to make a play for you. And the first play of the game takes it to the house.
Let me add to that if I can. I know Quadri's listening. Quadri's such a class act. My son is half my size. He runs off the bus and tells Max that. First play of the game, runs it all the way in for 7. I agree with Max. In our eyes, Quadri will always be a legend. But, again, I'm known as the Pitt Guru. I've been known as a Pitt Guru for 30 years. You can find me at Pitt Guru on X. I rep everything from Pittsburgh sports now. I'm also an author. I'm writing my second book. And if I have a little pep in my step tonight, my book is a best-selling book on autism. Right before we came on, an actress who I won't name at the moment from the Pitt, which has won every imaginable award for television right now, personally messaged me and requested my book. So I'm pretty pumped right now. But if you go to harrypaceris.com, you'll find out about my book. It's been converted to 4 languages. We've gone international, and I'm working on my second right now. And I've signed with an agent. So we're trying to get out there and get on television this year as well. But Pitt will always be, first and foremost, my first love. I bleed blue and gold and love interacting with all the fans.
And that's why you guys are the best. And, man, again, cannot thank each and every one of you guys enough. If you've not done so, hit the like button down below. It helps with the algorithm with YouTube. So make sure you hit the like button down below. And, of course, don't be a hoe. Share the show. That's the fee here for Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. And, of course, make sure you guys subscribe down below as well. It helps let you know when we go live, when I drop a video, when we meet with certain players, when there's special episodes that come out. And, again, it's all free. So just subscribe to the show. It helps out with everything that we're doing here at Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. As always and forever, hail to Pitt. We'll see you guys next time.